Welcome to another special Majestic Mind Matters University Mandatory Mental Liberation Series message, produced by Baba Jelani Bamani Dembe and narrated by Queen Magical Melanin. Like, subscribe, and share this message with all the people you care about. I'm Queen Magical Melanin. Today, we discuss the profound perspectives shared by Baba Jelani Bamani Dembe of Majestic Mind Matters University in the Mandatory Mental Liberation Series. The focus is on Story of the Honorable Khalid Muhammad. Khalid Abdul Muhammad was a key figure in the African-American civil rights movement of the late 20th century. Born on January 12, 1948, in Houston, Texas, Muhammad's early life was marked by the systemic racism and segregation that plagued the United States during that time. Growing up in a racially divided society, Muhammad experienced firsthand the injustices and discrimination faced by melanin-rich people of Alkebulan descent on a daily basis. These experiences would shape his views and fuel his passion for fighting against oppression and inequality. Khalid Muhammad rose to prominence as a member of the Nation of Islam, a melanin-rich culture nationalist organization founded in Detroit in 1930. Led by influential leaders such as Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X, the Nation of Islam advocated for the empowerment and liberation of melanin-rich people of Alkebulan descent through self-reliance, racial pride, and unity. Khalid Muhammad quickly became known for his fiery speeches denouncing white supremacy, institutionalized racism, and social injustice. His powerful rhetoric and uncompromising stance on melanin-rich empowerment resonated with many melanin-rich people who were seeking a voice to challenge the status quo. In the 1980s, Muhammad became a trusted advisor and spokesperson for Louis Farrakhan, the leader of the Nation of Islam. Together, they worked to galvanize the melanin-rich community and raise awareness about the ongoing struggles faced by melanin-rich people in a society that continued to marginalize and oppress them. Khalid Muhammad's bold and controversial speeches often stirred up controversy and made headlines, but they also sparked important conversations about race relations, equality, and justice in America. In the early 1990s, Khalid Muhammad parted ways with the Nation of Islam and established his own organization, the New Black Panther Party. As the leader of this new movement, Khalid Muhammad continued to be a vocal advocate for civil rights and social justice, championing the rights of the marginalized and oppressed. He organized protests, rallies, and demonstrations to demand equal treatment for melanin-rich people and to push back against the systemic racism that pervaded society. Khalid Muhammad's activism and outspoken nature made him a polarizing figure in the public eye. While some saw him as a fearless and passionate advocate for melanin-rich people empowerment, others criticized him for his aggressive tactics and incendiary language. Nevertheless, Khalid Muhammad remained steadfast in his commitment to fighting for the rights of melanin-rich culture people and challenging the existing power structures that perpetuated inequality and injustice for us. Controversial and divisive, Khalid Muhammad was a figure who often found himself at the center of heated debates due to his inflammatory language and provocative statements on a range of contentious topics. From racism and white supremacy to police brutality, anti-Semitism, interracial relationships, homophobia, and the role of melanin-rich people in American society, Khalid Muhammad addressed these issues with a level of intensity and vitriol that sparked outrage and condemnation from many quarters. Perhaps one of the most incendiary topics that Khalid Muhammad tackled in his speeches was racism and white supremacy. He was vocal in his denunciations of the systemic discrimination and oppression faced by melanin-rich people at the hands of white institutions and individuals. Khalid Muhammad would often use seemingly hateful and derogatory language to describe white people, accusing them of perpetuating a system of racial inequality that kept melanin-rich people marginalized and disenfranchised. While some saw his confrontational approach as a necessary means of drawing attention to the pervasive nature of racism in society, that others viewed it as needlessly divisive and counterproductive. Khalid Muhammad's stance on police brutality was equally contentious, as he frequently accused law enforcement agencies of targeting melanin-rich people for harassment, violence, and even murder. He condemned the use of excessive force by police officers, citing numerous examples of melanin-rich individuals who had been subjected to brutal treatment at the hands of law enforcement. While his criticisms of police misconduct were often justified, his rhetoric sometimes veered into calls for violent retribution against police officers, leading to accusations of incitement to violence. Anti-Semitism was another topic that Khalid Muhammad addressed in his speeches, often making inflammatory statements about Jewish people and their purported influence over various aspects of society. He propagated conspiracy theories about Jewish control of the media, banking, and government, painting them as a malevolent force that worked to subjugate other racial and ethnic groups. His anti-Semitic remarks drew sharp rebukes from Jewish organizations and individuals who viewed his rhetoric as deeply offensive and dangerous. Interracial relationships and homophobia were two other controversial subjects that Khalid Muhammad tackled in his speeches, expressing strong opinions on both issues. He condemned interracial relationships as a form of betrayal to the Black community, arguing that they were a byproduct of white supremacy and internalized self-hatred. His views on homosexuality were similarly regressive, as he espoused homophobic beliefs and condemned LGBTQ individuals as degenerate and morally corrupt. Khalid Muhammad often discussed the role of melanin-rich people in society, advocating for melanin-rich people, empowerment, and self-determination in the face of systemic oppression and discrimination. He called for unity among melanin-rich people and encouraged them to resist assimilation into a white-dominated culture that sought to erase our heritage and identity. While his message of melanin-rich culture empowerment resonated with many in the melanin-rich culture community, his confrontational tactics and polarizing rhetoric alienated others who felt that his divisive language hindered efforts to build bridges and foster understanding between different racial and ethnic groups. Khalid Muhammad's speeches on racism, white supremacy, police brutality, anti-Semitism, interracial relationships, homophobia, and the role of melanin-rich people in society were undeniably controversial and provocative. While most applauded his willingness to address uncomfortable truths and challenge the status quo, others criticized his inflammatory language and confrontational tactics. Ultimately, Khalid Muhammad's legacy remains a complex and divisive one, with supporters and detractors alike grappling with the lasting impact of his incendiary rhetoric. In his speeches, Khalid Muhammad justified his use of divisive rhetoric by arguing that he was speaking truth to power and addressing systematic injustices faced by melanin-rich people. He believed that it was necessary to provoke and challenge societal norms in order to bring attention to ongoing issues of racism and inequality. Khalid Muhammad also saw his inflammatory language as a way to galvanize and unify his community against our oppressors. Khalid Muhammad argued that his divisive rhetoric was necessary for advancing his message, because he believed that it was important to shock and shake people out of their complacency in order to bring attention to the systemic racism and oppression faced by our melanin-rich people in America. He believed that his provocative language and confrontational approach were necessary to confront the harsh realities of racism and injustice and to mobilize his audience to take action against it. Khalid Muhammad saw his divisive rhetoric as a way to rally and empower those who had been marginalized and oppressed and to provoke a response from those who perpetuated and benefited from the status quo. He believed that by speaking boldly and unapologetically about the injustices faced by our melanin-rich people, he could spark important conversations and catalyze meaningful change. Khalid Muhammad believed that divisive rhetoric was essential for effectively disseminating his ideas in contexts where there was widespread racism, systemic oppression, and white supremacy. He believed that using divisive language and controversial statements was necessary to provoke discussion, raise awareness, and galvanize marginalized communities to mobilize and fight back against injustice. Khalid Muhammad believed that meeting aggression with aggression was the only way to combat the dominant narrative and challenge the status quo. Tragically, Khalid Muhammad's life was cut short when he passed away on February 17, 2001, at the age of 53. His sudden death was met with an outpouring of grief and tributes from those who had been inspired by his leadership and activism. Although his time on Earth was brief, Khalid Muhammad's impact on the civil rights movement and the struggle for racial equality was profound and enduring. In conclusion, Khalid Abdul Muhammad was a fearless and unapologetic advocate for melanin-rich culture empowerment and social justice. Through his powerful speeches, bold actions, and unwavering commitment to the cause, Khalid Muhammad left an indelible mark on the melanin-rich culture, civil rights movement. His legacy serves as a reminder of the ongoing fight for equality and justice for us as well, and his voice continues to resonate with those who seek to challenge oppression and create a more inclusive and equitable society. I'm Queen Magical Melanin. We trust that you have expanded your understanding through the insights shared by Baba Jalani Bomani Dembe of Majestic Mind Matters University in the Mandatory Mental Liberation series. Specifically in this discussion titled, Story of the Honorable Khalid Muhammad. Remember, it is essential to honor the ancestors. We have a unique connection to the ancestors. They endured struggles, preserved culture, and passed down invaluable wisdom through generations. By honoring the ancestors, we pay tribute to our roots and draw great strength and inspiration from the resilience and legacy that have paved the way for our present and future. Ancestral reverence is a powerful way for us to uphold our identity, heritage, and cultural legacy. Strive for self-awareness. Treat yourself kindly and live a fulfilling life.